Hello everyone. Sorry that this video is late. The holidays got the best of me, but I'm back and today I'm going to be talking about cortisol metabolism in women with PCOS. So cortisol is one of those hormones that plays a really integrative role in PCOS, but just isn't talked about that much. We are more focused on testosterone, on estrogen levels, on insulin levels, on blood sugar levels, but we don't often get advised on how to manage our actual cortisol levels, which is unfortunate because nearly every woman with PCOS has some form of cortisol dysregulation. Now, if an individual has an adrenal subtype of PCOS, they have a lot of cortisol work to do, right? But even an individual with the most common subtype being insulin resistance, there's still a significant amount of cortisol dysregulation that is going on and likely contributing to their symptomology really significantly. So it's unfortunate that it's not more widely discussed. How exactly do we control our cortisol levels? What does that look like? And what benefits does it actually have for us with PCOS? So cortisol is a stress hormone. It's released when our body perceives a fight or flight situation. It can also be released when our body is just simply under chronic emotional stress or chronic illness that our body perceives as stress. So PCOS is a great example of this, right? It signals our adrenal glands to release high levels of cortisol chronically. And that starts doing a lot of things in our body. It starts breaking down tissues. It starts catabolizing proteins in our body, somatic proteins that would otherwise go towards building muscle and keeping all of our bodily functions working correctly. It can create symptoms like acne, weight gain, hair loss, all of the classic PCOS symptoms that we typically actually attribute to testosterone can also be traced back to cortisol as well. So this is a really important piece of the puzzle to manage, right? If we leave this unregulated, we're gonna find that even with all of the other changes and interventions that we're doing, we still have this symptomology that we figure should be fixed by now. So cortisol. Cortisol is likely the reason you're still experiencing symptoms, even after all the other interventions you're doing. So what does managing cortisol look like to somebody with PCOS? It sounds a lot simpler than it is. We have to manage our levels of daily stress, which sounds so simple, right? It's really not. But when it comes to somebody with PCOS, managing stress appropriately becomes 4 times as important as it is for a normal individual. And it's already hugely important for just the general population at baseline, right? So for it to be so significantly more important for women with PCOS, it should be high on your priority list of things you're doing to heal your hormones. This is something I personally struggle with. It's not an easy one to navigate. But there's a lot of things that you can do. There's targeted supplementation, there's daily habits that are cortisol mitigating habits. There's a lot of little changes we can make that have a significant impact. So I'm just gonna go ahead and walk through a handful of those for you guys and kind of dive into why they're so important. So first off, morning sunshine is really important in training our circadian rhythm, which is a huge regulator of our cortisol. So it becomes really important for women with PCOS within an hour of waking to go get some natural sunlight. This really triggers your body to know how much cortisol to release and what time of the day to be releasing that cortisol to follow a natural pattern. That also means good sleep hygiene at night as well, right? Because our body needs to be trained in both directions when it comes to our circadian rhythm. So what does good sleep hygiene mean? It means having a really solidified bedtime routine that you don't stray from. It means getting your 8 hours in. It means laying in bed with the intention of going to sleep, avoiding blue light within the last hour before bed. It means really having some mindful practices before bed that calm you down on a physiological level and really train your cortisol that it's time to stop releasing, it's time to go to bed, it's time to release the melatonin, and just reconnecting with your body's sleep-wake cycle, because that is tuning into really the cortisol release cycle as well. So that becomes really important. I really encourage all my PCOSers to get in the habit of making a good morning routine and a good night routine, because both those things are going to be really powerful in taking control of your own cortisol release cycle. The next thing, the type of exercise you are doing in a day becomes hugely important when it comes to PCOS and cortisol release. So certain exercises are going to give you a surge of cortisol, which is not what we want with PCOS. And then there's other types of exercise that are going to be a more minor surge of cortisol, but ultimately they're going to correct your cortisol curve in the long run. So those are the types of exercise that we want to focus on with PCOS. So what does each look like? High intensity cardiovascular exercise or high intensity interval training create large cortisol surges. So those are the types of exercises that women with PCOS really should be avoiding. They're going to tend to actually cause women with PCOS to gain weight rather than lose it. And they're going to cause a lot of the other symptoms we see to worsen as well because you are promoting such large cortisol release. Shifting to a focus of strength training and weight training is going to be the most beneficial, low cortisol release, high metabolic benefit exercise that you can do. So this means lifting with weight ranges of 8 to 12 sets till failure and consistently increasing, progressively overloading the muscles, avoiding intense cardiovascular exercise and focusing on more gentle forms of cardiovascular exercise. So whether this be evening walks, or just walking on an incline on the treadmill in the gym rather than actually running, those are all ideal forms of cardio for somebody with PCOS. And then making your centric focus of your workouts a lifting strength training scenario is going to be ideal. You will see the most metabolic benefit, you will see the most symptomology benefit, and it will just overall benefit your hormonal profile a lot more than any cardiovascular exercise you can be doing. So again, lifting weights that leaves you in the range of 8 to 12 reps before failure is the ideal place to be. And progressively overloading those muscles so you're constantly making some progress in terms of increasing weight, increasing reps, but staying in that 8 to 12 until failure range. The next thing, some targeted supplementation. So when we are looking at adrenal dysfunction that can happen from chronic cortisol release, some basic vitamins and minerals become more important than just for the standard person because our adrenals really heavily utilize very specific minerals and vitamins that get depleted when we have chronic adrenal dysfunction that can be found in PCOS. So which vitamins and minerals? First, vitamin C is most abundantly found in our adrenal glands. It is the adrenal gland's main fuel. It really utilizes vitamin C more so than any other physiological piece of our body. So vitamin C becomes important in adrenal function. Specifically, some new research out there is suggesting that a great way to mitigate high cortisol release for somebody with adrenal dysfunction when they're participating in any form of exercise, really, because any type of exercise is going to cause some cortisol release to some degree. So a great way to mitigate this when you have adrenal dysfunction becomes loading up on some vitamin C immediately before going into that workout. And this seems to be a really effective way at preventing symptomology from worsening in women with PCOS when they are still trying to stick to an exercise regimen, because we really want to decrease or cushion the cortisol blow, if you will. And vitamin C before your workout is a great way to do this. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to come from a supplement, right? But it can. It also can just mean that your pre-workout snack be very vitamin C rich. So, incorporating a piece of fruit, obviously paired with a little bit of protein prior to going into a workout, I would say within at least 30 minutes, is going to be an ideal pre-workout snack for your adrenal function and to cushion that cortisol blow. So that's something to keep in mind going into your workouts, especially if you tend to feel very drained, fatigued, and sore after you're working out. It could be a sign of very high cortisol release and high lingering inflammation. So this can be a preemptive way of mitigating that and kind of correcting the dysfunction there. So we see the adrenal glands also heavily utilize B vitamins, magnesium, calcium, salt, real salt, not sodium. So there's a difference there, right? Sodium is what we tend to find in processed foods. When you pick up a canned soup or processed food of any sort, and you look at the nutrition label and you're reading the sodium content, that is sodium. That is different than what we view as salt. What we think of as salt in terms of the salt that your adrenal glands can actually utilize, it comes in the form of sea salt, Himalayan rock salt, kosher rock salt, those more pure forms of non-processed table salt. So if you're just looking at ionized table salt or the sodium within processed foods, that's not something our adrenal glands are going to utilize, and that That is the sodium that is related to some metabolic health concerns. These more pure forms of salt are not linked to metabolic health effects, and they're actually required by your adrenal glands to function properly. So they become a really important part of your diet. So I encourage you to utilize a more pure form of salt and utilize it fairly liberally if you have a form of adrenal dysfunction, because again, our adrenal glands do need this to properly function, and it tends to be severely depleted in forms of adrenal dysfunction like we can see with PCOS. So those are some quick tips for optimizing your adrenal glands on a very generic and basic platform. If you are wanting any personalized help with this, I do offer one-on-one coaching. I also do offer functional testing where we can really see if there is adrenal dysfunction happening within your PCOS symptomology as well. If that's something you're interested in, click on the link below, contact me, reach out, ask all the questions. And as always, let me know if there is a topic you guys are specifically interested in hearing about, and I will make that video happen. Okay, guys, that's all I have today. I will be posting again next week, so I will see you then. Thanks for watching.